Now we move a little forward to the 1800s, and we come to a very important conflict that has been one of the first that has been recorded in colonial India in 1809. And this was the time before the English laws, that is the IPC and other such penal laws penal provisions came into existence. And at that time, we had the PITS Act, the Regulating Act, and these were mostly dealing with economic issues and also with certain public order and other such kind of things that were happening in between, but nothing to deal specifically of religious issues. So this is the Lat Bhairav riots of 1809, and the Lat Bhairav temple is there in Benares. It's between the temple of Vishwanath and the Eidgah, that is there, the mosque. And so it is at a very, very sensitive place. And so the Lat is basically a kind of a pillar, in fact, a stump now, that is believed to have been associated with the, Puranic stories and the legend of Kal Bhairav and the whole fracas that happened with Brahma when his head was severed. And, the whole story is, of course, known to everybody. So the Lat Bhairav, this pillar, is known to be the staff of Kal Bhairav, and through which punishment is meted out to sinners. And so that is the importance of the Lat Bhairav temple, and you can read it up on the internet. It's given in great detail. So the Lat Bhairav is married off to a nearby well, and this is done every year as per tradition. So in 1809 in Benares, now one has to understand the the religious scape here, and the kind of what kind of religions were prevailing at that time in Benares. So the lower class weavers that were there, they were, of course, neo converts through the whole kind of belief system in Ghazi Mia, who was the nephew of Mahmud of Ghazni, and his name was Salar Masood. And he was also a military general in Ghazni's army, and he was known to be a proselytizing Muslim, and he was killed in battle by one of the Hindu kings, Suhaildev. And all these accounts come through hagiographies of Ghazi Mia, Salar Masood by Muslim, hagiographers. So this Lat was at one point in time a sacred space for both the lower class Hindu as well as Muslim weavers. And the Hindu merchants were the ones who were in charge of the business being given to the weavers. So coming to the 1809 Lat Bhairav riots of Benares. So before the Lat Bhairav marriage festival, the Muslims, after their Friday prayers, raised a protest. And according to the Muslim memorial, it states that the idols of Sri Ram and Master placed in the pulpit in the premises of the Eidgah. And according to the Hindu memorial, the causes were different. Since there was no such law put in place with regard to religious spaces, and there was kind of a status quo, and the British maintained a kind of a, non-interference stance. And so there was constant disputes that were happening in the past as well, where idols were kept at the peepal tree near the Lat Bhairav pillar, and the aarti was done and they were prayed to. And then when the Muslims came to the Eidgah to pray on Eid and other major festivals on Fridays, the idols were quickly removed or covered up. And so this was continuing since a long time. And so the Qazi there, who was the law officer, and the Kotwal was in charge of the police, and he was responsible to the Mughal. And of course, the British were in charge of revenue collection, etc. And so this is how the whole, administrative setup functioned there. So this time, normally the Qazi was complained to after the Dashera festival and Nat Bhairo marriage festival was over. So this time after, these are well recorded, historical documents in the Hindu and Muslim memorials that are, in the archives, which were recorded by the Britishers and kept as records in this case. So in the 1809 Lat Bhairo riots in Benares, colonial Benares, the Lat Bhairo marriage festival, the Muslims, after their Friday prayers, raised a protest and polluted the area surrounding the Lat Bhairo and also beat it with shoes, etc., among other sacrilegious acts at night. And the Hindu memorial states that there was a small Hanuman idol that was placed kind of a space or chabutra between the temple and the Eidgah. And there was a Hindu businessman who had recovered from a grave illness and wanted to build a small shrine there dedicated to Lord Hanuman. And this land was not claimed by anyone, this space. And so it was something that was unclaimed. And so this kind of aggravated the other community. And while they were polluting the surrounding areas of Lat Bhairav and doing all these sacrilegious acts, they also overturned the Hanuman idol that was placed on the pedestal. And all this was done. And next morning, the Hindus gathered in large numbers at the site of sacrilege. And the situation became out of control, and the Kotwal had to arrive on the scene with a large contingent in order to disperse them. It was later known, according to the Hindu memorials, that the Kotwal, a Muslim, was found to have gotten hand in glove with his community as per the Hindu memorial of the riots. And he had seated himself at the foot of Lat Bhairav and invited the Hindu representatives to appear before him to air their grievances. Upon complying, Ratan Singh and his three associates were simply taken to the police station where they were beaten without any inquiry. And this led to all the more retaliation from the Hindu community, especially the Rajputs and the Gusains, who were religious mendicants and mercenary traders. And of course, the Hindu community was more than the Muslims, so they outnumbered the Muslims. And this mostly comprised of the weaver class of the Muslims, the neo-converts. But due to the diplomacy and firmness of the district magistrate, the rioters were eventually broken up and the city was completely in the power of a large military force by the third day. Now, by the law as then existing, the sentences passed on the offenders should have depended on the fatwa or legal decision of the Mohammedan law officers, who would, however, have been obliged to release the Hindu prisoners in order to avoid meting out the same punishment to the Muslim detainees. And so the Muslim memorial ends with nothing but an appeal for separation of the two communities and the religious spaces. The acting British magistrate, Mr. Bird, protested against this, and he writes that although common sense and natural justice must view the excesses of both parties as equal offenses against the public peace, authority of government, and the welfare of the society, still the fundamental principles of the Muslim law are diametrically at variance with such a sentiment. That law, resting on the assumption of excessive sanctity of the Mohammedan religion and the heresy of all other modes of belief, will consider the slightest insult offered by a Hindu to a place of Muslim worship as heinous sacrilege and profanation, while in the greatest outrage committed against any object of Hindu superstition, it will see nothing but a laudable attempt at the extirpation of idolatry. So the government eventually dispensed with the fatwa and instead decided to have the trials conducted by a special court appointed by the government. And it was decided that whatever was made to the original position of the parties, no alteration would be done. And permission was given to both the parties to repay damages according to their respective religious customs. And each purified their violated altars. But it was not until June 1810 when the Hindus reconsecrated their outraged shrines and veneration was paid to the original pillar. And so the first riot can be said to have actually concluded in June 1810, about 7 to 8 months after the riots. And the source of this is the Hindu-Muslim relations in colonial Benares from the Lat Bhairo riots of 1809 by Sundar Vishuvalingam with the collaboration of Elizabeth Shallier Vishuvalingam. And we see a rehash of this entire episode recently in 2016. Again, the center of focus was the Lat Bhairo temple, and there was riots that had happened there in the same manner, and almost like history repeating itself. I've given the link to the article. One can read it.